Hello and welcome to the Ellen Made Book Club. I have some books out from the library that I'm really curious about, so I figured we could try a chapter. I think these are all new releases from 2025 that I have had my eye on, and they've all come in to my library at the same time. The first one is Moderation by Elaine Castillo, and I think this is some kind of a science fiction romance novel. We're following a woman called Girly who works as a content moderator, like online content moderator, and she's offered a job as a virtual reality moderator. And so she accepts this job, but then there are some darker things going on in this virtual reality company or programming or something. She also might be falling for her boss. And then I have Ruth by Kate Riley, which is also about a woman. And she has grown up in some kind of a Christian communism cult fundamentalist community that always intrigues me, and this one sounds like a very good one. All of the quotes say it's very well written and it's funny, and I don't know, I just think it sounds very intriguing. Third book that I want to try is We Don't Talk About Carol by Kristen L. Berry. More of a mystery, general fiction, family drama, I think. In the early 1960s, 6 black girls from the same North Carolina neighborhood went missing. Only one of them was made a ghost, and that person is Carol, and her niece, I guess, is like now in the present day or like later learning about Carol and what happened to her. And so I don't know if there's like an investigation exactly, but there's a mystery of what happened to this woman or these girls, some family secrets, I'm guessing by the title. I'm just gonna try the first chapters and see which one intrigues me the most, and which of the writing styles I like, or like if any of them hook me and like intrigue me more, and which ones I want to keep reading. So if you're curious about any of these titles, let's find out which ones seem good. I'm nice and cozy in my blanket and I'm ready to try some chapters. I guess in this one I'm gonna read the first chapter, which is 14 pages, and then we'll see whatever matches the closest to that in the other books. Sci-fi romance? We'll see. So right from the first page, they're talking about how this moderation job is really tough on a lot of people and how it affects people in a very bad way. And yeah, one can kind of imagine. That was a kind of intense first chapter. It goes into a lot of things that are on the videos that they're moderating, and it's, the worst of humanity in these videos. Not super explicit or anything or like detailed, but it's very bluntly said. So there's no like euphemisms for anything. It's just, this is what it is, and it's awful. Nothing has really happened in the first chapter. It's basically just setting up this workplace and sort of how it works and how they are sort of specialists in different topics within this moderation. So some of them are specialists in abusive content, and others are more like toward violence. So yeah, it seems to be set a little bit into the future, and they seem to be in Vegas. There is something in the text which is kind of a pet peeve of mine, which is using a lot of like really layered sentences, I guess, and using a lot of like dashes, like M dashes, long dashes, and parentheses, and just like stuffing stuff into sentences instead of like splitting them up into a little bit more of a digestible text. I'm not sure if that goes with the topic of this first chapter. Maybe it is. It reads more like a nonfiction book almost, and like it's just describing stuff. Like, here's a paragraph. There was, of course, an attrition rate. The turnover in the content moderation racket was high, to say the least. Management liked to give the impression that they were concerned when employees showed signs of needing a break or wanting to leave. I don't know, it feels very factual, which makes it feel real, so I guess that's good, but it's not, nothing has happened at all, like, to hook me into the story. It's just describing this work that they do and who the people are working there and what the conditions are, like what they're paid and, how the company is taking care of them or not, and some really dark things mentioned. There is a touch of humor as well, like it's talking about how she is getting a health checkup with her doctor. The doctor tells her that her symptoms might be symptoms of early menopause. So do you have hot flashes, premenstrual cramps, mood swings, increased irritability before your period? Oh, you mean like hating everyone and everything around you and wanting to lie down in traffic instead of have a conversation? Girlie asked, trying to make it sound like a joke. Dr. Shamsi frowned at her. Yes, she replied evenly. Like that. I wouldn't exactly call it silly funny. I was expecting it to be a little bit dark and weird, and so it's living up to that. And like we haven't gotten to any of the like virtual reality moderation stuff yet, which is what the story is going to be about. I don't know, it's a bit of a weird start. But yeah, I'm still gonna keep reading this. Okay, so the next book that I have then, Ruth by Kate Riley, which is the one about a woman who grows up in a snow globe of Christian communism. So many fun things. Okay, so let's see how long the first chapter is. Doesn't seem like it has any chapters. There's a break on page 14, so I'm just gonna read until that. Yes. This one has a kind of similar setup to moderation. It's very much just like describing different things, and even though there aren't any chapters, there are sections. Each sort of section is like a page or two, or half a page. Each section covers something different. Here's one section on Gracefield, and then there is a section about like their family and her grandparents, language, I don't know, women giving birth. Then there's a section where the men in the community discuss whether or not children should pray. It's giving little bits and pieces of this community and like different pieces of the puzzle, I feel like, setting the scene for this story, but yeah, nothing has happened yet, and we haven't really met anyone. Like, this story is supposed to be about Ruth, and it's not like, the first paragraph is about Ruth and her name. I don't even know how old Ruth is. She is in school, and she's acting like a child, and like looking forward to the Christmas presents and things like that. So I'm guessing she's a child, but I don't know how old, if she's like 10 or 15, or there's no real like character. She's talking about her mom a bit and her dad and how he tried to fry a cucumber once, which is when she understood that he was deeply magnetically pathetic. And there is definitely like a tone of sarcasm or irony. It's just very like funny, but in a kind of very dry way. It's also very like high level language, I think. There has been a couple of words that I'm like, what does that mean? I mean, some of the words, I don't know what they are because they are either specific to this particular community, which is not a real one, or it is from some kind of community that I don't know a lot about. But yeah, the language is kind of high level, I think, like at least for me as a non-native speaker, and like it's not, the simplest words or the simplest structures. Here she's talking about like Christmas decorations. For several hours, unbeknownst to itself, the community possessed Candyland. Ruth found 3 of its loosely associated cardboard quadrants in the milk crate of donated children's books and confidently interpolated the 4th. Though seized and destroyed before dinner, the game remained vivid to her for years. Like, it's not super advanced or anything. It is a little bit like brain on language. So yeah, it's reading a little bit dense at the moment, but it's still like good, I think. I'm enjoying the tone of it and sort of the observations, I guess, or like the things it's calling out, like, you know, the man trying to fry a cucumber because he doesn't know how to cook. He doesn't know the first thing about anything in the kitchen because that is the women's realm, and the same goes for like child minding. But they have made some kind of a rule that there should be a man and a woman in each classroom because that is how a family is in this community, and so the same should be mirrored in the classroom. It is a conservative community. I'm not sure how I feel about the structure and the fact that there doesn't seem to be much of a plot moving it forward. It does remind me a little bit of Women Talking by Miriam Taves, just because it's a similar sort of community, and it's similar in the sense that Women Talking is also not like your typical narrative, like that's written as if it is minutes from a meeting. And this one is not that at all, but it's just like these loose sections as puzzle pieces. Like, here we're talking about this aspect of the community, and then the next section is, you know, not connected to the previous one at all. It's not immediately like hooking me. There's nothing happening. It's just sort of the writing style, I think, and like if you like this sort of just sort of observations and slowly, I guess, building towards something, and then within this setting of a fundamentalist community with a wry sense of humor, which is what I wanted. Not necessarily the writing style, but the setting. And so I'm willing to give it a shot and to keep reading, but so far I'm kind of undecided. It has potential, but I wish it had more of a hook plot-wise, because so far there is no plot as far as I can tell. Okay, so third I have We Don't Talk About Carol by Kristen L. Berry. Mystery/family drama, I think, about missing girls. There's a prologue and then there's a chapter 1. It adds up to be about 15 pages or so I guess that's what I'm reading in We Don't Talk About Carol. So the prologue is set 26 years ago, and it's immediately addressing the title, which I appreciate. So yeah, on to chapter 1. Okay, that felt really good reading that. This one is a lot more regular contemporary storytelling, a narrative and dialogue and things moving forward. The prologue is set 26 years ago when the main character, Sydney, is 13 and they're staying at her grandmother's house. And she goes snooping around and she finds this picture of her Aunt Carol. And she asks her grandmother about it, and her grandmother just says, "We don't talk about Carol," and seems to be like a little bit shaky. And then in the first chapter, we are back in present day, and so Sydney would be 39. Her grandmother has passed away, and so she is back at the house, her grandmother's house, with her mother and her sister, and they're there to clear out the house. And it's not her mother's mother, it's her father's mother, but he, I think, is also passed away. So it's just these 3 women clearing out the house of the paternal grandmother. And as they're clearing out the house, Sydney again finds this picture of Aunt Carol, and a neighbor tells her that it's her aunt. And so in the first chapter, we've already learned that there is an Aunt Carol and what seems to have happened with her, and that there were also other women or girls who went missing at the same time as Carol went missing. And so what happened to her, and should maybe someone try to figure that out. So in terms of writing, this one is much easier to follow. The language is a lot simpler and more like normal. There is quite a bit of these like, not metaphors, but like similes, I guess. I don't know. I think I heard someone talk about that recently, and so now that's in my mind. So I'm not sure if I would have picked up on it as much if I hadn't had that in my mind, but now I do, so I did. And it's just things like, her accent reminded me of Grammy's, sweet and stretched, the way caramel pulls apart when you break a Twix in half. And like, I kind of like that, but there were kind of a lot of those things. There was another one here. I tugged the window open after a brief struggle, feeling layers of paint separate, like the parting of parched lips. And like, it's a very specific simile. I think it's a simile. It's a very like vivid image, and you understand exactly what is happening. So it serves a purpose, and it's not just, you know, for the sake of sticking something in there. And I think the Twix breaking in half is also like, you get that sweet and gooey feeling of the accent and like the drawl. I think it works. I just, maybe there were a few more than necessary. I'm not really sure. Other than that, I think it has already created these characters very well, and like they're very clear immediately. Sydney is more like the put together one maybe, and her sister Sasha is a little bit more, you know, fun loving maybe, and is the one to ask to borrow some money for coffee. Immediately hugging strangers, and, you know, a little bit more bubbly and open and free spirited maybe, but also like maybe not as responsible as Sydney is. So there's that like sister dynamic. I really appreciate that they're very defined already, and with lots of room to grow still. Not a lot has happened except for like the premise of the book, but the premise of the book has happened in these first two sections, the prologue and the first chapter. And so we're not just like, you know, spending 100 pages building up to her finding this picture and realizing that there's an Aunt Carol. No, we're just like immediately into that in the first chapter, and I really appreciate that, because now I want to know what's going to happen. So this one I definitely want to keep reading. I kind of wish something more had happened, but I'm very glad at least that the basic setup for the story is done now in chapter 1, and we can move on to figuring things out and seeing what's going to happen next. Overall, I think this was a very successful little try a chapter exercise. I do want to read all of these books. I think the one that's easiest to read is definitely We Don't Talk About Carol by Kristen, and it's also the one with the most like intriguing plot so far. Both Ruth and Moderation has just been like set up so far, and so they both still have lots of potential, and I am still interested in both of the books. I would say both of these are a little bit more challenging. I think maybe We Don't Talk About Carol is the one that I am going to read first out of these 3, but hopefully I will get to all of them before I have to return them to the library. I would love to hear which one you think sounds the most interesting and which one you would continue reading. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.